Good morning. I'm Pastor Matt. I'm Pastor Chaz from Youth 814. Almost forgot her name right there. Just was going to throw out anything else, any other thing besides Youth 814. Well, we're Youth 814, and here we are getting into the middle of August. And once we hit August, there's a lot of things that are happening. A lot of people are starting to think football season. A lot of people are starting to think fall sports and everything like that. Of course, in the world we're in right now, who knows what all's going on with everything there. But the most important thing, probably, with most of you that are watching this, is what is going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. And that means you're going back to school. And that could mean you're going back to, it could be elementary school, it could be junior high, senior high, or it could be college. And for some people, maybe you're even beyond college and you're doing graduate or seminary or anything like that. But typically speaking, as we hit August, things start moving in that direction. And I know here in the area, between August 18th, I think it is, and August 26th, somewhere in there, all of the schools seem to be going back to school in whatever way they are going back to school this way. And so today
it's all subject to change.
It's all subject to change. It's all subject to change between now and whenever school is supposed to start or will start. We'll put it that way. But as you're doing that, we want to kind of talk a little bit today about going back to school. And a lot of times it's something that a lot of people don't look forward to. It's something that a lot of people do look forward to. I remember when way back, would go back to school, I didn't look forward to going back to school for the part of school that I should have been there for,
right,
which was the learning part. I looked forward to going back to school because all my friends are there.
Right.
And so I'm going to see all my friends, I'm going to be with all my friends from 8 o'clock in the morning till, if I'm playing soccer, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night or later. And it was just an enjoyable time for me because I was there with my friends. I had to bear with all the studies and the teachers teaching lessons and stuff like that. But that's what I looked forward to school. And so it wasn't a time where we're going back to school. I look forward to it for that reason.
Yep.
But I know there are a lot of people that don't want to go back to school, and maybe it's because you don't like the learning, and maybe it's because I don't have any friends, or maybe it's because I'm going to a new school this year and I really don't want to have to make friends. A lot of people don't look at it in a positive light,
right,
or try to find a positive way like I did, I guess, to look at it. I don't know. What do you think, Pastor Matt?
Well, and today with this, I want to challenge us to change that thinking a little bit. Not necessarily, it's not a choice of, hey, I'm going to love school now. Maybe it is just finding that one idea or that one thing that makes school fun in shapes or forms. I mean, mine was always sports and friends like yours, and I had a great group of friends growing up. We had a blast together. And so anytime we were together, whether it was in a classroom, whether it was after church going out to eat, showing up randomly to go play sports or going to watch a movie or whatever, it was always a good time. And so like you, I enjoyed the friend aspect of it. But one thing that I personally wish that I would have done better at, and when it came to school, is I want to challenge you to see school as an opportunity to invest in other people. Because our whole life is who we're being influenced by and who we're passing on that influence to. My life right now, I have not only just a youth group, not just hopefully people who are watching here, and not only who I coach, but my influence extends to my family. And really, the influence that I was being taught growing up and the people that I held on to or I wanted to look after and follow their example, I'm taking that influence in my life and I'm sharing it with other people. But it's definitely something that I fell short on earlier on in life. I could have had a great, not necessarily because I was this cool person, or anything special, but I could have been a better godly influence to people coming up after me in school had I just wanted to and saw it at that opportunity. You see, during school, whether you're in Christian school, public school, or even homeschool, you may say, well, I have nobody who I can influence being homeschooled. It's actually not true. You may not have the same group of people, But you can be an influence to even your parents, maybe a younger sibling, or maybe even showing to other people a drive and a work ethic that they can respect and see. But we all have opportunities to influence the lives of other people. And school just makes it easy. Because we're always right there together, and people, whether they admit to it or not, are always watching how everybody else acts and reacts. Because what's the big draw or the big topic all the time when it comes to teenagers? It's dealing with peer pressure and dealing with people pulling you one way or following God.
Yep.
And you could be the person who's pulled, or you could be the person who's pulling people towards God. And that is something that is so important. And we think of many times, I'm a teenager, I'm supposed to enjoy life right now. And I tell people all the time, don't worry about, get a full-time job if you want a full-time job, especially in the summers. But you're going to work the rest of your life. Enjoy certain times of your life now where you don't have those type of bills. Not that your parents can always take care of everything for you, but enjoy some time of being a kid. But don't enjoy it to the sacrifice of what you could have done while you were that age. And Paul tells Timothy this when Timothy at this point in time, maybe probably a little older than teenager, and he was a pastor, but at the same time, Timothy was young compared to everybody else he was preaching to. And in many ways, he was nervous. He was nervous about how he could use that influence or his ability in order to tell other people. And Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12, "Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word and conversation, in charity and spirit, in faith and in purity." Paul tells Timothy, the older people of your church, the older people around you, don't let them look down upon you just because you're young. But show them that you can be their example in the way you have your conversations, in the way that you speak, and through love, through faith, through purity, and many other ways as well. And you have that same opportunity of influence to be somebody that maybe a younger person, maybe a peer. The reality is maybe even a teacher who you could influence in the right way and be the positive or the right kind of peer pressure, right kind of influence to those people.
Yeah, I think about that too. And when you think about it, and you think about pulling people, and which way do you pull them? You can pull them towards God. You can pull them to Jesus by how you're living, and of course that all depends on what your relationship is with God. And yet, when we think about that, and we get into an issue, a circumstance, and all of a sudden we're thinking, okay, here's my opportunity. I can lead them this way, which is towards God, or I can go this way. And then you think, well, if I lead them this way, maybe people are going to laugh at me because I'm saying something about God. And so then we opt not to. And really the influence is there. It's just which way are you taking them?
Right.
And, you talk about Timothy there and being young and everything. It made me think about back to the book of Jeremiah. And this is, of course, where Jeremiah is being told that he's a prophet, and we're talking about Josiah, the king, the young king there. But it's interesting in verse 4, Jeremiah says, "Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee as a prophet of nations." And so this is God talking to Jeremiah, but really we know if we have come to know Jesus Christ as Savior, God's working in us in the same way, and He has done those same things that we read in verse 5, and to get us prepared for whatever He has for us at that time. Okay, and so then we say, are we going to lead towards God, or are we going to go away from Him? And even Jeremiah then said, "Then said I, Lord, but behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child." I'm young, But the Lord said unto me, "Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee thou shalt speak. Be not afraid of their faces, I am with thee to deliver thee." And I think that's the thing. We get afraid because of what the other people are going to say. Or we look at them and they're like, well, if I say this, they're just going to laugh at me. We should not be afraid, because God has prepared us for that time to lead people in the right direction. And yes, sometimes we do it by the way we act. but a lot of times it comes down to what we have to say.
Right.
And if we're not acting and we're trying to say, it's going to just counteract and go against each other. So you need to act that way and then also say it that way. And we need to not be afraid, but trust God through it all.
And you may be thinking, well, yeah, I want to do that, but I'm all by myself. And everything in the Christian life starts on a personal level. Everything starts with me. It has to start in my life on my personal level. But you may not know how God is working in other people's life. You may not know that somebody else has made this decision as well, but they're worried about being the only person.
That's right.
They're worried about being the person who's made fun of or thought of as the outcast or the Bible thumper or whatever you want to call them. They may be just looking for somebody else to be that encouragement to them to stand up and do right. Sometimes it does take that one person to be that strong, maybe even vocal force of saying, hey, we don't need to do this, or we need to help in this area, or we need to be kind to these people. Then you'd be amazed at how other people fall in line because they've wanted to do that. They just didn't feel like they had a loud enough voice or good enough voice, so to speak, to be able to do that.
Yep.
Because the Bible even says in Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 17, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friends. If you truly want this decision to happen, find friends that also want it to happen. Bind together as a group. Don't make it an individual. It has to be your individual decision first. But don't keep it at being individual.
Right.
Keep it growing in the cause of Christ or for the cause of Christ, because your influence can only grow the stronger you are and even the stronger that your group is. You can also pick each other up when you struggle or when you fall. That group helps, again, continuing to keep us strong and continuing to keep us to where we can be that right kind of influence, and really changes my mindset when it came to school. Now, that doesn't mean that, my friends were always super godly when it came to school things, but I can tell you when my friends were wanting to do right, man, we had a blast doing right.
Right. Yep.
And we were close and we pushed each other to do right. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we didn't speak. Many times we probably didn't speak. But when we chose as a group that we were going to live right and do right, it was the greatest thing in the world. And we loved to do it. It wasn't easy. It was hard. And sometimes it was hard to be the person to stand up and say, hey, guys, we made this decision. It wasn't easy, but we made this decision to not do this or not to be a part of this certain things. And yet, every time that we as a group chose to do so, it was so much more rewarding than even myself doing what was right.
And sometimes, like you said, that only took one person saying one thing. And the rest of them were like, oh yeah, you know what? That's right. And so I think that's what you need to look out for too. We all have our circle of friends. And that may be a big circle, it may be a small circle. You have your levels of friendships, everything like that. But somebody's got to stand up. And in every situation, somebody's got to stand up. Now, that doesn't always have to be you if your group is growing together.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's better to do that together. Yes, maybe you already have your group. And if you're going to stand up and say this, that they are all going to ditch you, well, then they're not the group that you should be with anyway.
Right.
If that's the case, then you should have no fear of losing them because they're not going to draw you to Christ or help you get closer to Christ. The only thing they're going to do is try to get you farther away from Christ.
Right.
And so that's what you need to look out for. Get yourself with a group of people that will, as he said, as he read, iron sharpeneth iron. Grow you closer to God. Make you stronger. Make you ready for whatever comes along. Make you ready to be able to stand. Because, yes, we need to be doing this now when we're young, because that's just going to prepare us more in the future. And in the future, that group that you have, the friends that you have, may not be with you in some classes or all classes or whatever school you go to. You may not see every day, but your group, you might only see a couple days a week. And then when you go to work, you got to still make that stand, and you still got to have those people that you know are sharpening you in your walk with Christ. And I think that's what we got to watch out for. Who are our friends? As we go back to school, maybe we need to say, hey, you know what? I need to talk to my friends right away and find where they stand. Because if they're not going to stand and they're not going to do that, well, then they're not the ones that I need to be hanging out with.
And just to give you a little bit of practicality here is, this is actually should be easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
It should be easy to find a group that hopefully wants to do right and to live right. Maybe we're never all the way there.
No.
And we're always working. It doesn't mean that group's going to always be perfect. It doesn't mean that group's not going to struggle. It's not even going to say that that's true. Group is not going to struggle regularly. But we should be able to easily find a group as Christians that are wanting to serve God. Mm-hmm. And for you as teenagers, that group should truly even be easier. Because as we're even sitting here, and this is not a ploy just for our youth groups, but a youth group is a great place to start. Mm-hmm. If you're searching for a youth group, Pastor Chaz meets on Wednesday nights here at 6:30?
7 o'clock summer, 6:30 as school gets going.
Okay. And on Wednesday nights at Faith Baptist in Altoona. We meet on Wednesday nights at Foot of 10. There's many churches around that have great youth groups that can get you involved in a group that wants to do right and live right. It's not going out and finding this random group in my school of people that I'm constantly going around asking, hey, are you a Christian? Hey, do you want to do right? You know, there are regular places that can happen and take place. And it doesn't have to stay in that group. In fact, that group should be constantly growing. That group should be constantly getting bigger. Maybe not always, you're always close like you said before, but that group, as we influence other people in our life, it should grow because our influence grows. Even as a teenager. Mm-hmm. The Haystack Revivals were started by a group of teenagers that decided to get together and pray, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And they just decided they were going to live. A handful of teens decided they were going to get together and be right. And we see in Matthew chapter 5 really kind of what it comes down to. Because we as Christians are called to be salt and light in this world. We're not called to be salt and light when we're in our adulthood. We're constantly called as Christians to be salt and light. It says in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 13, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. So let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. A quote that has always stuck with me from the time I was in high school was my Sunday school teacher said, he said that you are, and this isn't original to him, but he said, you are the only Bible that somebody may ever read. Mm-hmm. You know what? Some of these kids that are in your school, that are friends around your house, even in your youth group or around your living, you know what? They may never come to church. They may never watch a Youth 814 podcast. They may never read their Bible. They may never watch a church service online. But you know what? They're watching you every single day. Maybe not with that intention to see how you live as a Christian, but you could be that salt and light, that influence, as a teenager, as a young person, that shows somebody else, you know what, God is worth it.
And I think that's the thing. It's not that you could be, you need to be. Mm-hmm. There are people watching you all the time. And it doesn't matter if you go to a big public school or a little Christian school. You go to a big public school, you might have more influence because there are more people there and they're watching you, and it may be whatever kids are in your class or anything like that. You go to a small Christian school and it may be the kids that are in your class, but it's also maybe the little preschoolers or the kindergartners that are looking up to you as a senior or junior or whatever you are. People are watching you. And not just those people, but the teachers are watching as well. And you need to understand, the concept here seems to be a simple concept.
Right.
The doing of it is the hardest part, because you have to make a stand somewhere, and you're going to have to make a stand on something. And the fact is, whether you stand for God or not, you are making a stand somewhere for something, because it's just, what are you going to lead people to? And it's a hard thing to do because of the peer pressure that comes along with it. And that's where I come down to looking at 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. You know, you're going to school. Everything you do there, you should look to God for that.
Yep.
Everything you do, you should look that that's an opportunity where you can praise God. You know, there's people that have a lot of food at lunch, and there's people that don't have a lot of food at lunch. But it doesn't matter. We can still give glory to God.
Yep.
And there's people that have the best stuff for school, whatever the best stuff would be, I don't know. And there's people that, you know, maybe you're taking plastic bags. I don't know. Your backpack's a plastic bag. You know, give God the glory that you have the opportunity to go and be an example for Him.
So change your mindset. 2 weeks, 3 weeks away is school, Lord willing. Don't look at it as a drag to go to school. Yes, schoolwork doesn't always, excite anybody, hardly anybody who's right in their mind. Maybe you're going just for friends. Maybe you're going for sports. Maybe you're going just because you have to. Whatever the case, change that idea to say, okay, how can I show God to other people? I can show it in my friends. I can show it through sports. I can even show it through academics. I can even show it just by being there at school and doing the right kind of things. It's so important that we learn this now, because we have so many opportunities. And I feel like in my own life, I probably missed many opportunities as a teenager to help somebody be a good Christian later on in their life by the stupid teenage decisions that I made.
Just wanted to have fun.
Right? And so, it doesn't mean everything always has to be serious. It doesn't mean that every time you get together with friends, it's time to sit down and have a Bible study. Okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about choosing friends that all have the same mindset of, I want to live for God. And you watch, as you stick with that decision, the change in your school, the change in your personal life, the change in your home life, the change in your social calendar, social agenda, whatever you want to say, and you'll watch that you will have, I guarantee you, at least twice as much joy in your life than anything you ever thought could have happened, because God's involved and God can give a greater increase to your life than you ever thought possible. We're Youth 814. We'll see you next week.